Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing beautifully well. Today for something that I didn't think would be very popular, to be honest, but it turns out it is being really popular. This is the mighty Swedish Draken, and we've got Michael here to tell us about it. Hello Michael.
Hello everybody.
Let's talk about Michael quickly. He was a J-35J Draken mechanic. You know, this is Swedish, so this is conscript for a year. 1994 to 1995. 11 months conscription. I was 20 years old when entering the service. 46 years today. Aircraft weapons mechanic on the J-35J Draken, i.e. ground service, getting the birds ready for flight at the start of the day and between flights. The service was 3 months of boot camp and technical training. The remaining 8 months was daily operations and exercises doing the same thing in field conditions. General background, 46 years old, Swede, computer nerd, welcome to the club, by hobby and profession. So, Michael, what we've got is we hand the questions over to you guys, the valued public. That's good and bad. Sometimes they come with weird questions. Sometimes they come with amazing questions. It's just luck of the draw at the end of the day. But we just ask your questions, which I've got here on my other screen, 35 of them, unfiltered. So we'll see how we go. Anything, Michael, you want to say before we start belting through the questions?
No, just be prepared that I will digress a bit and talk about things around this and what relates to it.
We love digression. We love nothing more, and I'll do it even worse than you. In fact, I'll start off, shall I? So Draken is an interesting one for me. I like old kind of Cold War planes, as you know. It's just, for me, that's the pinnacle of aviation. And this aircraft was introduced to me by my older brother. He's 11 years older than me, and that's where he's what introduced me into aeroplanes, took me to the air shows when I was, single figures of age. And one of his favourites, were, well, what have become my favourite, so the Lightning, the Starfighter, and the Draken, the Mighty Draken. I never knew much about the Draken, mainly because I'd never seen it. I'd seen a Starfighter. They used to come over to air shows back in the good old days. I'd seen a Lightning, ditto. But I'd never, ever seen a Draken in the skin before. And so it never really meant anything. And now I've been reintroduced. I'm 39 now. So, God, so 25 plus years later, I've been reintroduced to Drakens. They're gone now, essentially, from service, a long time ago. But we're learning about them again. And, I mean, just from first looks, I mean, look at that. That's just a weapon, right? That's designed to take off quickly as possible, within engineering at the time. Yeah. And shoot stuff down. It's just absolutely how a plane should be. So
yeah, I absolutely love the clean lines on it. I mean, you don't, especially when it's freshly painted. Okay, the one we're looking at now is, it's kind of scuffed, and that's how they would look for a while. But when they just came out of the paint shop, they were so clean lined. I mean, for the first day, if a plane came out of the paint shop, we would take off our shoes before getting up on it because it was just so gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I liked about this era, no, planes were not as good back then. This is not as good as an F-16 or Hornet or whatever, understood. But with the technology at hand and the know-how at hand and the manufacturing processes at hand, I really love the single-mindedness of this here. The single-mindedness of other planes like the F6, like the Dart, like the Starfighter, just kind of fuselages with tiny little wings. I love that thought process that goes into it of no nonsense.
Yeah, and if we step even further back, if we go to the J-29 Flying Barrel, it becomes even more obvious. But let's stick to the 35 for now.
Yeah, that's one thing we and the viewers are really getting into this. Why the Swedes, I don't know. It's just something, you guys, you've always done your own thing, and we've really admired that. You've always built in-house, for whatever reason, I don't know why. You've always gone your own way. You've never copied anyone. Everything, I know you've technically remanufactured missiles and stuff, but I mean, your airframes have been like nothing else in the world.
So here comes first digression, the reason why we were going at it our own way. First, slightly historical. We have been non-alliance since 1812. That was the last time we were in a national war. I mean, we've been fighting in wars since then, especially in UN missions. But like I said, non-alliance since then. they say Sweden was neutral. Well, it's not really accurate, but just not being in an alliance. This aircraft was projected in 1950. So by then, the Cold War has spun up ever since the Truman Doctrine in 47. We could see from the end of the World War that the days of dogfighting appeared to be almost over. What we would need to worry about is high-flying bombers. And with the Cold War spinning up, we could see that. Okay, I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So here on the right side, we got the Warsaw Pact. Far over on the left, we have the U.S. In the middle is the big battleground for a potential World War III. So if you have played Larry Bond's Harpoon game, or if you have read Tom Clancy's Red Storm Rising,
Yep.
You know that this middle ground here, the Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom gap, would be a keystone for winning a conventional World War III, especially since Russia... the US will want to supply Europe in a World War III, shipping stuff over, just like they did in World War II. And the Warsaw Pact will try to stop it. And most of the power to do that comes up here from Severomorsk, from Murmansk.
Roger.
So they will want to fly and steam down here through the gap to get into the Atlantic Ocean and disrupt the sea lanes. And NATO will, of course, want to stop them. So it was very obvious, that the first thing that's probably going to happen in World War III is that the Warsaw Pact will want to move up their northeast flank here and just use Norway and Sweden to stage everything from and to keep their fleet base safe. And also we got another air base. Up here is where you have the really big hammers for winning a sea war. So that was Draken's task. Get up there and stop the bombers that want to come in and drop nukes on us. So that's why it looks like the way it does. Very streamlined. It's all engine. It's lots of engine. Just get up there, pound the bombers, get back down, reload, and get back up again. So that's his job, essentially.
And we had a similar doctrine. We had the Lightning, I guess. That would be our equivalent of your Draken. And it was exactly the same thing. You go and look at it, it's all engine with a guy bolted on the front, designed to do one thing, to get up as quickly as possible, shoot a bomber, and if he can get back, bonus.
Yeah, something like that. So the reason why we keep doing our own stuff is because first we are a pure defense force. So everything we do has been designed to defend Sweden. Which is slightly different than if you, like the US, you are projecting power somewhere else. Then you have different requirements. But instead, we are fighting on home ground. We're using a conscript military force instead of a commissioned one. So everything that we're using needs to be handled by essentially late teenagers. That have had their training and then go to war with it. So also, like I said, we are always having close to home, so range and things like that, range and being able to loiter for a long time is not really important to us. We just need to be available. We don't need to loiter in the area for a long time. So all of these things put together mean that we have our own requirements list. And also, when being non-allianced, we cannot really expect that, somebody else is going to ship stuff to us. So that's part reason why we went our own way. We have our own requirements, and we were not in an alliance. But, of course, if we switch back to the game, change windows, War Thunder.
So what you're saying is your doctrine was just a basic, was just a function of your situation.
Yeah, very much so.
Which makes sense.
We were squeezed in there between the two power blocks. Either one of them would be interested in keeping the other one out, away from there. The standing joke when I was doing my military service was to call Sweden the stationary aircraft carrier HMS Sweden. Because that's what we were. We were a staging base where people would be able to fly into the Geo Gap or down into the Atlantic and wreak havoc. Don't think anybody really expected that Sweden itself would be any kind of strategic importance. I mean, with resources and such. Then again, in the late Cold War, there was a book series called Operation Garbo, which is actually way before it happened. Talks about the crumbling Soviet Union and how they might want to start a war against little Sweden as a show of power to get rebellious republics in line. So, and the book was finished. The book series was finished in '91, I think, and it ends just like it did in real life, with the Soviet Union falling apart. So that was interesting. But the most important was, okay, we are a staging base for others, or a buffer zone. So we just want to. People might come stomping for that reason.
At the risk of listening to what you've said there, and at the risk of again going off on one before we even get started. So, do you think? I mean, I see that Doctrine all the way up to and including the vegan, but when it comes to the Gripen, has it changed? It feels like it's changed to me, or do you disagree with that?
Since the Gripen got into service, Gripen took off in '88, first flight. Cold War ended in 1991. And since then, yes, our doctrine has changed. We have gone from national defense to international participation, which has affected in that the C and D models of Gripen, the next generation. I shouldn't call it next generation, but we have the AB, first generation, came in the 19s. C and D models are operating now, and E and F models are just being fielded. And yes, the C and D models were modified to be able to work better internationally, like introducing NATO standards in the cockpit, pilots starting to learn things like the bullseye system, which we didn't use since, I mean, we're flying at home, we know where everything is, but when you're flying internationally, you have to set a bullseye. So everybody knows what you're talking about. So yes, doctrine has changed, and it has affected the Gripen. Like also the Gripen C, they got air-to-air refueling, which we didn't have before. We never bothered with, but now if we're going to fly with everybody else, and everybody else is doing 5, 6, 7-hour missions, we better be able to sail aloft.
Okay. Yep, all makes complete sense. Right. Shall we punch on with the questions?
Yes.
Okay, a bit of a generic question here, but how easy was the Draken to work on maintenance-wise?
Okay, we need to... I'm taking a note there. We need to differ between turnarounds and maintenance. Yeah, sure. We did what's also called B, C, and D service, but they were like the 10-hour, 100-hour checkpoints. But they were pretty rare. We, as conscripts, we did daily stuff. Getting the plane ready for the beginning of the day and refueling and getting it ready between flights. The heavy maintenance stuff, like pulling out the engines, that was done by the commissioned technical officers. We as conscripts were not doing that. We might be assisting, but we were not really doing it that way. So that day-to-day stuff was the Draken was, and all Swedish planes were made so that you can keep that going with conscripts. But if you need to do any heavy lifting, you need to send it back to the hangar or to the shop for a while, that is handled by commissioned officers. But turnarounds, very easy. This relates to, let's see, Question 34. What was the minimum number of personnel that could service and keep a Draken mission ready? For daily flights at home base, we were usually one conscript per plane and one technical officer per 2 planes.
Wow.
So one commissioned officer for 2 planes and just one conscript per plane. That's all we needed to keep the dailies running.
That's very low, isn't it?
This was made for it.
So it was again designed around the idea. And was this aircraft also designed around the AGS type idea that we can work, on road bases? Sorry, I forget the terminology now, but away from professional airfields.
Yes, it was. I don't know if it was from the beginning, but it certainly was adapted for it. And so, yes, this can use the Swedish digression again. There was 2 versions of this. First, the base 60 system, and that was the road bases, the war bases, as we call them. And we might even visit one. I'm changing streaming again because it's not a problem to show you. So if you in Google Maps feed in Hagsholt, you should get Hagsholt Air. And here we go.
So we've got a base here, yeah.
Yeah, so this is just a small part of the base, actually. This is the main runway. All these war bases, they had a main runway. But if we zoom out, let's follow this road.
A nice straight road, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, and what do we end up with here? Here's another runway.
Wow.
And this is from, what's it called? What's this called? Let's just call them piano keys. This is 800 meters long, so that's a short runway. So let's take a step out to the west here. Look at the E4 there. That's also very straight. So yes, we had one of our exercises on this base, and actually somebody brought a portable TV so we could see on the regional news when planes from our exercise was landing out here on the E4. And here's another stretch.
Yeah, so these roads were designed, especially near the bases, to be used as these base 60s or whatever. Yeah,
as alternate runways. Now this one has been updated to base 90 standards, so it has a bit more runways. But if we take a look around here, if we start following this road down here,
what does the number mean? 6090.
It's the years when they were fielded.
Right.
If we follow the road from the main runway, actually that's an alternate runway right next to it. I didn't notice that before.
So you can't conventionally bomb this base. There's no point.
That's the whole idea, to spread out, to disperse, instead of being in a few. I mean, like I said, we saw the writing on the wall by the end of the war. It's going to be nukes. So let's not sit in one place and just get knocked out by one nuke.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. We have 5 runways on this one, just to not get knocked out. Also, you can see the readying places here by the end of the main runway, but that's not the only ones. If we follow this road, you see this big square here?
Wowza. Look at that.
And if we follow, you see one to the lower right. And if we go down here, here's another one. Let's go in and take a look at them.
Oh, wow.
So there is a readying space for an aircraft. And of course, you could also mount poles around this one to put a masking net over it. So this is all to mask and just let's not get all knocked out by a bomb all at the same time.
Yeah, that's fascinating to see how the whole infrastructure. I can't think of another place. I'm sure there are other places in the world like that, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I find that really interesting.
Finland does something similar. They even for their F-18s have Catabar built into some of their road Let's see. No, not finding anybody.
I mean, it's really an interesting time to be doing this into, because we've literally just 2 days ago had this, what we're talking about, added into DCS. We can now have road bases for any aircraft anywhere on the edge of road anywhere, and we can start making bases anywhere operating from roads and stuff. A lot of people haven't seen kind of how important this is yet, but I can see that, you know, it has huge implications for what we do for simulation. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so the Draken was given a drag chute for this. And if you're coming down clean, you can really stomp the brakes and pull the chute early. You can stop it in about 600 meters.
Yeah.
These alternate runways are, like I said, they are 800 meters from end to end. So they should, and everything from that was built on that you should be able to use these. So the Viggen, of course, has its thrust reverser, and Gripen is so small that it essentially stops on a dime anyway. So yes, it was built for the doctrine of dispersing out in the... And we can link this in later on. You can find base 60 and base 90 on Wikipedia, but we'll get to that later.
Very good. Okay, great. I love your presentation and your preparedness. I wish everyone was like this, I tell you. Make it so much easier. Very Swedish. Right, number 2. Did you get any choice in the branch of armed forces you were conscripted into? If so, what contributed to making the decision to work on aircraft?
The process of conscription was that first you get drafted. So you have a day off, like 2 days off, actually, when you go to some place and they measure and weigh you, see how strong you are, and you take some simple aptitude tests. If you do well on the aptitude tests, you can do additional ones. Like I was doing one called the telegraph test, and I did fairly well. So the major that then finally interviewed me and assigned me said he wanted me for the Swedish what's it called, signal intelligence. I had heard some friend at work at summer internship say that, oh well, aircraft readying is a really nice thing. Okay, that's all I knew, and I knew that my parents live only 10 kilometers from where I eventually ended up. So this is, here it is, F10 Ängelholm, former airbase. Now it's home to Koenigsegg, if you know those supercars. Yeah,
were you the chap that was sending me the questions about Koenigsegg, or was that someone else?
I was somebody else.
Okay.
Anyway, so I essentially nagged him down, and he eventually gave it to me. So, in hindsight, it would have actually been great to go for signals intelligence, because I would have been given a university course in a language, but I don't regret it. It was fun. It was fun to do the Air Force.
Roger.
So yeah, if they could, they would heed your wishes. Otherwise, they would just assign you.
Roger. Okay, very good. Were there any aircraft you would really like to have worked on but didn't get a chance? I'm not sure if that means like fantasy world, anything, or kind of Swedish stuff. So you can take that question however you like.
No, not really. I wanted that particular airbase, and it was close to my parents. And they had 1 squadron of Viggens and 2 of Draken there, so I just ended up on one of the Drakens. But I was just happy to be in the Air Force.
Roger. Okay, number 4. What were your first thoughts seeing the Draken in the real? I mean, you might have just grown up with them and thought nothing of it. And it said it looked like a spaceship to me. And just before you answer, there's a really interesting thing. What I've noticed is that with me covering the Draken, this is the first time a lot of the next generation, the younger guys, teenagers, have ever even seen a Draken. And they're absolutely fascinated, but a lot of them think it's a brand new plane because it looks so space age. And it goes back to the idea of how space age, because planes are what they are now, how space age, the old 50s and 60s, the SR-71, that might as well be a UFO. Concorde might as well be a UFO. Draken, UFO.
Yeah, well, this is space age. I mean, it was first flew in 55. So, I mean, it's just 2 more years until Sputnik. And, I mean, I've been looking into Dad's old yearly chronicles, years in flight, and everything was centered around space and missiles and jet engines and going fast and going high.
That's it. That's exactly it. And this is why I love it so much. The vast majority of fighting done nowadays is done by 90-knot propeller-driven drones. It's so sexless. And I know war's all bad. Yes, I understand war's all bad. But still, you know, we're interested in it. It's all done by incredibly boring, dull vehicles. And look at this. It's literally Buck Rogers. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but back then was also a time when speed, when muscle mattered. If you could fly higher than the other ones, you could outrun them. If you could fly faster than them, you wouldn't have any trouble. You would dash into your target, pound it, and get out. You didn't need to... it was the hope that you could just outrun everybody else and get in there, do your thing, and get out. That was the thinking of the time. Now we know, now we can send missiles and drones that can do muck ridiculous and still hit you.
Yeah, it's a sad age, though. I mean, it's even DCS is going this way now, where we've got, you know, we've got standoff, and our campaigns that we do represent, interestingly, the functionality of our weapons, and our campaigns have become now boring. They used to be cool back in the day when we didn't have super long range Phoenixes and Slams and stuff like that, but now we just toss missiles at each other from 100 miles away. Exactly the way that the real world's gone, and it doesn't matter anymore if your plane can dogfight or if it can go fast. It's completely irrelevant now.
But that's sort of where it gets a bit interesting, because Swedes have often been. I mean, we're not allies with many, but we have cooperated, especially with NATO, and we've been called in to play the Red Force often, because we have been doing our own thing, and because we are more or less bent on asymmetrical warfare. I mean, like I said, our most probable enemy in World War III would be the Warsaw Pact. I mean, they're giant, and there's little Sweden. I mean, we didn't really expect it we'd be able to hold them out. But we can throw clogs in the machinery at least, and make it cost them. So we've often been assigned to do asymmetrical warfare and do dissimilar things. And so things like flying low and fast and using the terrain to do sneak attacks is something that the Swedes have been. The little I've heard is that we have been surprising our bigger friends with that, and that's why, for instance, the submarine HMS Gotland was called in to help NATO's Blue Water Navy to fight diesel and electric submarines in difficult environments, because we're fighting in the Baltic Sea, which, from a sonar operator's perspective, is a nightmare. We got temperature gradients, we got salient gradients, we got everything that makes it so hard to find a submarine, and that's our home plate. So I mean, we have, I believe, a reputation for using the resources to the max, to be sneaky, rather than just have a lot of it and throw more into the fight.
Roger. Okay, very good. What was the Draken's primary role, and what armament, now we're getting spicy, did you use to load onto it? So the version you had was so it's quite late in the career of this aircraft, in the 90s, and it was the J model, okay?
Yes. Its role, like I said, it was an interceptor, primarily designed to shoot down high-flying bombers. And for that, let's take a look at the secondary weapons in the stream here. So the RB-24 here, that's the Sidewinder. We got, for Draken, I believe that we had the There we go. Yes, it's the AIM-9B. And we also had later we had the AIM-9J. So the RB-24J here is the AIM-9J.
Were you really using the AIM-9 Bravo model, which was pretty terrible, in the 90s? When the rest of NATO was using the Mike models?
I don't know if they would have put them on the planes in an actual war, but they were loaded on the planes for training purposes. So they would keep sitting on the plane just so that you could try to get a lock-on with them. But yeah, we had both the pointy-nosed ones, the J models, and the glass-nosed B models. We even had a couple of planes coming back with broken glass noses on them because they had flown into hail clouds.
That's interesting, because the AGS that we have in game, I think that is a 90s variant. So the same kind of time that you were working on these. And one thing that's fascinated me always, and people won't talk to me, so I've got no one to talk to, but you can only equip on some pylons the Bravo model of the Sidewinder, the old one, the crap one, the one that was developed in the in the 60s, 50s. And I'm like, why is that? And I've come across it again now. You've got a J-35J with the same thing. I'd love to know if someone out there knows why in the 90s it looks like in these aircraft you're probably equipping some Sidewinder Bs, which are, let's face it, 30 years out of date by this point and pretty terrible. It's interesting.
Probably, like I said, it's an interceptor. It's made to get up there and shoot at big targets that are not maneuvering. You can see on the loadouts here. Up here are small. These are essentially fighter rockets. And here are the little bit beefier ones that, if you feel daring, you can throw them at the ground as well. But they are. Like I said, this one is made to shoot bombers. This was the 50s. Everybody expected that dogfighting was a thing of the past. And in the future, all you really needed to do was deal with the bombers before they drop a nuke on your head. Which leads us straight onto our next interesting question. You've got unguided rockets there. And suddenly we're saying, hang on, I'm fighting with unguided rockets. And one thing I've learnt, my first look at the Draken, is that you launched, or were going to launch unguided rockets, radar-aimed, unguided rockets at aerial vehicles. That's right, wasn't it? Yes, the early radars, for the early models, A, B, and D models, the radar could not do continuous wave. So it was essentially just aiming assistance. It could help you aim the Sidewinders. It would help you aim the gun, since you had distance information to your target. But they did not do semi-active. That didn't come until I believe the F models.
Roger. Just to clear it up for the viewers, when you launch a radar-guided missile in your aircraft and your radar guides it, it uses something called continuous wave to guide it. So that's what we had a lack of then, I guess. Interesting. Yes,
that is true. So, like I said, that came in late in the game. So the D model that we're watching now, did not have that. So it couldn't launch the semi-active missiles that came later on.
Roger. So, question: these rockets, I find it fascinating. These radar-aimed unguided rockets. How would they? I mean, you're never going to hit anything with them. So, did they have a whopping great proximity fuse on them that just,
I honestly cannot recall if these were only impact fused or if they were proximity fused. I never loaded any live ones. I only loaded the training rounds, so I couldn't see if they actually had a proximity fuse on them. And even if they had, I might actually be prevented from telling you if they had.
So were you loading any semi-active radar homing missiles then? Because I know we had some on some of the variants.
Yes, we did. That's the Falcon, the AIM-4s.
Yeah, wow. I only literally learnt about the existence of the AIM-4, again, by looking at the Draken. I didn't know it even existed on other planes, so what an interesting missile. I know nothing about it, other than it's very small compared to anything else I've ever seen. A great picture there. So is that a Falcon on the right and a nuclear Falcon on the slightly left of the right?
Yes, they are. Let's see, 27 Falcon and 28 Falcon. The beefier one there is the semi-active radar homing, and the one on the far right is an IR.
Oh, I didn't know you had an IR variant. How interesting. So fellow viewers, you're used to your Hornets and your Tomcats and stuff. So on the left there is your Sidewinders. That's what you're used to, being the small thing. Now look at these tiny little guys on the right here. These are your AIM-4s, which you would have had beforehand. So that one on the right there is your precursor to the Sidewinder then, right? The IR sensor. How interesting.
Yeah, sort of. So, and of course, in the AIM-2 variant, these came with a small nuke, but we did not have them.
Do you know if any of these AIM-4s were fired in anger? By anyone?
I have no idea if that happened in Korea or anything.
I mean, I not really for a living, but I spend a lot of time just Wikipedia type researching events just for the fun little videos we do, and I've never heard of an AIM-54 anywhere ever, even being loaded, let alone fired. And I've been through hundreds of events, but
yeah, I honestly cannot say.
Very interesting.
But yeah, these beefy ones, they look kind of stubby.
They really do, don't they? But look how small they are. Yeah.
But next to the Sidewinders, yeah, they're tiny.
If you had a Sparrow there, it would go right out of shot and be as wide as nearly the fat nuclear one there. That's how missiles have changed. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, sorry, go ahead.
And imagine a Phoenix standing here then.
Watch it, yeah. God, how much that weighs. If you're at home smacking your head going, these guys don't know anything, and you happen to be a missile expert from the 50s and 60s, I would love to have you on, because I'd love to learn about this. Right. We're going to push on now. Anything else to mention about the ordnance, was what the valued viewers asked.
There was a question about the gun, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I forgot all about this.
The ABD models had the two 30mm. I think they were the Swiss Oerlikons, or however that is pronounced.
Yeah,
I'm making a hash of that.
I never understood either, don't worry.
Let me just take a quick look here. No. Let's see, was that the Aiden?
Oh, that sounds more like it. An Aiden sounds more like it to me, because we had the Aidens as well. Who made the Aiden? Did you make the Aiden?
No, we didn't. I mean, if we made it, it would have been a Bofors.
Roger.
Yeah, there we go. It's the Aiden. The Oerlikon was for the Viggen. I got it confused.
Right, well, we all know about the Aiden because we've had it in several other aircraft. In fact, the Viggen has the Aiden, doesn't it? It has two Aiden pods. I think.
Good lord. The fighter Viggen, that's the one that has the 30mm Oerlikon in a flush pod under the belly.
Right, yeah, that's that. And R1, the AGS, has two Aiden ground attack pods. Low velocity, 30 mic. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Also, let's see. Once we got the updated avionics for the F model, we had to ditch the cannon on the right side. You can actually see the.
I think I can see it in the wing, in the glove. I don't know what you call it on this, but there. Do you see it there? There looks like a gun.
That's the gun port, yes.
Right.
And this hatch right here, if you can see my mouse pointer, that's the ammo.
Ah, how interesting. I'll tell you what, I don't know anything about War Thunder, and I'll probably, my viewers will probably never let me get into it, but that model is something else, isn't it? That's probably better than the DCS model. That's really top notch.
I'll have to get into DCS and take a look at it. I'm going to digress now because I wanted to do this, since you said you wanted to interview me, and talk about the bugs on this model, the things that they got wrong.
Yep.
And it also relates to a question you had, how the control, what do you call it? Control lines? Control system. Anyway, here is a
look at
bug.
that. Why don't we have that in DCS? Well, no.
Yeah, because this is one thing I really like about War Thunder.
Wow,
See,
that's
armor,
amazing.
protection analysis, you can actually do like so. I can take a shot.
Wow. Why don't we
And
have that?
And it shows me,
That's
boom.
so superior.
So I can try it out and see if I do if I hit like that, boom, right through the engine. That would be a bad day.
Yeah.
But they actually have gotten the control system wrong here, because if I recall correctly, sorry about that flip, X-ray, here they show it as running along the belly.
Yeah, got that.
And out on the wing edge. But I actually believe, if I recall correctly, it goes down and then up and runs along the spine.
How interesting.
So the control cables run along the spine back here to the tail, and from there it distributes out to the various servos. The question was it mechanical? Yes, there's mechanical cables all the way back here, and then there is servo assistance for the elevons, and also back to how simple it is again. I mean, look at this. You just got the elevons out here. You got a rudder, and that's it.
Are those elevons one piece, as in all the way down the span of the wing, or are they multiple?
No, they are. There is a small break here, but I don't think they operate independently.
Okay, can you put the X-ray on? Sorry, just.
So no flaps, no slats, nothing of that. It's just combined ailerons and elevators, and then there's a rudder, and that's it.
Here's the first question that jumps out at me. I mean, obviously, massive, great engine, designed around a big engine. Why is the engine so far forward and the jet pipe so long? I've seen this in some planes. I just don't. It seems like a waste of, well, you could have a big fuel tank there instead, couldn't you?
I don't know. I think that this might be slightly misplaced. This is a Rolls-Royce Avon, by the way.
Yeah. Great engine.
But what I think they're simply not showing the afterburner, because this one had a honking long afterburner. But I suspect they might have been placing this a bit too far forward.
Interesting. Okay.
Also, I think that one reason you would want to put some more weight forward is that you get a very stable airframe. I mean, in the video you saw that the Drakens did the
Cobra.
Well, what was later called Cobras, but I mean the techs, they were kind of scoffing at that and saying, "We've been doing that since the 60s."
Yeah.
Because a platform like this is inherently stable. I mean, look at the huge wing area you got back here. And then with the engine so far forward, you got the center of gravity about here. So you have an extremely stable platform. If you yank back the yoke, you can start building up a momentum so you can get the plane to start pitching up. Before the aerodynamics grab it. But once you have it in that belly first direction, I mean, the slipstream is just going to grab the deltas back here and push it back down again. I mean, it's not until you lose so much speed that you don't you get into the Draken's infamous super stalls that you have any problems with it. But this platform, it's hard to abuse that into actually spinning out. So that's why it could do the Cobra. It's just it comes. It's a feature of Deltas, quite simply.
Okay, so that's good. Now we've got obviously no fly-by-wire of any kind. Maybe some augmentation in there. Are we aware of how that works?
Yes. Yes, there was. They didn't call it an autopilot; they called it a steering automat, which sometimes would confuse newer pilots. If the steering automat was analog, and the generator would be on a constant RPM, and there was a gearbox between the engine and the generator. What do you call it? A variable gearbox that made sure that the generator always had the right RPM. But at a certain engine, at a certain turbine percentage, about 92-93%, that was too close to what the generator was supposed to have, so the gearbox could become confused. And that would make the voltage on the main bus start to fluctuate up and down, and that confused the steering automat that would make the plane start going up and down a bit.
Wow.
So rookie pilots could sometimes write an error report and that to say, the steering automat went out of whack, and then people would just say, no, it's just a feature when you have it at that RPM.
Interesting.
No worries.
Okay, very good.
Also, I think I spot a bug here in the model. You see these cylinders here, they say fuel tank. They are not. Those are the hydraulic tanks.
But I was going to say, that's a funny looking fuel tank.
Yeah, reason I know this is because this was one of the checkpoints every morning. Check the hydraulic fluids level in these tanks, and you access them through the wheel well here on the main landing gear.
Roger.
Another bug on this one is that the ram air turbine is not deployed.
Would that be deployed on the ground?
Yes, because as soon as you didn't have enough hydraulic pressure, that one would be spring-loaded and fall out. I think we can...
Our Vigan one suddenly appeared in DCS, so when we're on the ground, taxiing around, our little thing pops out.
Yeah, I can... Also, yeah, so that one should be out. Also, I think that when they made this model, they have probably done a walk around on a J model because of this little filler port right here. It's a round one. I'm going to switch to... Now you should have a picture of a smiling tech. And so that filler port there didn't exist on the early models. That came in very, very late. And if you look at the big barrel that he's leaning on, you can see what he's loading. Isopropyl nitrate. That was the starter, sort of the starter fluid. There's a little turbine sitting right before the main engine.
Like an APU? Or...
What?
Like an APU?
Not really. It was only used to start the engine. But that ran on this monopropellant. And normally the filler port for that, you can see where the filler port is now. But that only existed on some of the planes we worked on. On the others, the port would be turned 180 degrees inwards instead, and we would have to sit under the plane, stick our head and arm up through the ram air turbine hatch here, and then try to press that bayonet lug sideways, twist it just right, and get it to catch. Otherwise, we would be showered with isopropyl nitrate and off to the infirmary to get rinsed, because that stuff was nasty.
So is this? I'm guessing this is how you started the jet rather than ground power to expedite QRA.
It would need ground power anyway, but it would. Yeah, that's the starter.
Yeah, interesting. And you can see the little ram that's popped out there as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, and this also gives you an idea of how small the plane is.
Yeah. Wow.
You can see here that he's sitting on his knees and almost still banging his head on the air intake there, on the glove. Let me just go back here. So you had another question saying, how big is this plane? It's really tiny. If I'm standing up, I'm looking into the air intake. Also made it a little cramped to work under. And well, there could be a little bit of a hazard. In the later versions, they added a missile rail here on the glove, so the rail would normally sit there mounted even if there wasn't a missile on it. So at least once when I was working here in the forward wheel well, I would hear the fuel pump suddenly go, and I realized, okay, it's filled up. It's time for me to take care of the pump. So I duck out of the forward well, head forward, start dashing towards the right main gear well, and bang! There I'm sitting on the ground, blinking, wondering what the hell just happened. Looking up and realize, oh, I just put my forehead right into the missile rail. Fortunately, I had my hearing protection folded forward, so the metal headband took that. But apparently, someone over a third that was doing it at the same time, he apparently knocked himself unconscious.
Wow. Yeah, you need dwarves. You know what? You need dwarves to work on this thing because it's so low.
Yeah.
It's like a MiG-21. A MiG-21's maybe not the smallest plane in the world, but everything's so low down compared to a modern plane.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the pilot here, you can see there you get a rough estimate of the size of this plane. I mean, it's about 8 meters long. It's not big.
Makes an F-16 look big.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. What model have you got there, by the way? Oh, that's a Delta model, right, with 2 guns.
Yeah, that's the Delta models, yes.
Roger. Okay. Right, I think we should punch on then. We've already answered this one, but let's see if there's anything you want to add. Was the Draken able to operate from roads and small airfields like the Viggen?
Yes, it was.
And we've got a parachute, a drag chute that comes out of the back, and there was some other feature you said that could make it stop quick, and I've forgotten what that was.
Just ballsy pilot.
Okay. One thing I noticed is it must be hard to land quickly. With the Viggen, you can slam it down a bit like you do a naval plane. You slam it down. Big, heavy gear. Everything's designed to slam it down and get a reverser. On this, though, it looks like you have to finesse it down. If you see the back, you've got those tail wheel, there's those rear wheels to stop you banging the big jet pipe at the back. It doesn't feel like this is a plane you can really slam down and quickly. I imagine that's not the easiest thing to land.
I mean, like I said, we're trained for short landings, for stole operations. And sometimes when they came back, they would have landed on this small one, taking the alpha too hard, and actually blown the tail wheel. Also funny, this tail wheel didn't come until the Drakens got the long afterburners. The short afterburner, then they only had a little brass spur that was sitting here that took that kind of been comfortable to land on. But I know at least from the trainer variants that were C models, sometimes they did that. I would take a look at the spur and see, that slid along the runway.
Roger. Well, it looks only about 7 degrees alpha or something like that before you're touching them, so that's a thing.
Yeah, but it's also sitting. If you take a look, it's also sitting a bit squat.
Yeah, it is.
So let me see. Here. Here you can see.
Yeah.
It has a few degrees.
A standard. Maybe that was to help it to take off or something. I don't know.
Yeah, this leads us to the next question. What was my most memorable moment? I've written the note, Division Commander on Ice. And also you were asking about, could this be done in any weather? We did operation in most weathers, yes. And this particular day was the first day after the Christmas break. So it was cold outside, and sure, base maintenance had been out and taking care of snow, but there was still a very small layer of snow left on the apron. Like you see, the plane is sitting squat. So when the engine starts, I got the division commander that day on my plane, and he starts up and he's going through the checklist, and the snow melts behind the aircraft. But it was about 10 below, so by the time he came back, about 45 minutes later, that had frozen solid again. So was an ice sheet there.
Mm-hmm.
And before he can get down to the spot where we're readying the aircraft, he has to do a 90-degree left turn. And I'm looking at him and thinking, isn't he coming a bit fast? Is it like he's being a little bit aggressive? Sure, right by the end of the turn, he apparently puts on the brakes, and I see the wheels lock up. Okay, he's coming sliding in a 12-ton plane here. And he had no control. I mean, okay, he could steer, but the rear wheels were just going wherever they wanted because they were completely locked up. So I was just standing there with my arms crossed thinking, okay, hope this goes well. It did go well. He didn't bump into anything, and he just ended up a bit off. So I had to stretch the fuel hose a bit to reach. But
that could have been embarrassing and expensive.
Yeah, if he had the other space, the one to the left, then the big fuel cistern, concrete fuel system, he might have run the tip of the wing into that. More memorable moments. We were out on an airbase one day, not in wartime condition, not for wartime practice, but we were just doing dailies from one of the war bases. So we had a rental van to get there. And that was in the good old days when bumper stickers were still a thing. So in these rental vans, there were actually bumper stickers saying Hertz Rent-A-Plane. Okay, funny, but what are we going to do with that? Can't put them on a plane anyway. Or can we? Apparently some of our mates thought so. So when we received one of the planes that had come from another base, and we looked up on the fin, we could see, wait a minute. They'd taken one of the bumper stickers, put it on the tail of the plane, crossed out car, Hertz Rent-A-Car, and typed in plane instead. Near start failure. Oh yeah. Also out on base one day, the plane is starting up, and it has a very characteristic sound when it starts up. It's a sequence that, I mean, you learn it by heart. It's a high-pitched whine, then there's the whoosh of the starter turbine burning that isopropyl nitrate, and then the main engine kicks in and goes woo. But all in the middle of that, suddenly there was a big crunch. It was that was a noise. That wasn't supposed to be there. So I sort of tugged the sleeve of the technical officer and asked him, well, did you hear that? Oh, yeah, he said. So what was that? He shrugged. That was probably the starter engine that seized up. Oh, my goodness. But we're taking a look, we're listening, and we're taking a look out the back and see that the main turbine is just spinning up fine. I still had to ask him, I mean, is he going to fly with that? Oh, sure, he's going to fly. He needs to fly home with that now, because if he stops the engine now, we have to fly a replacement starter engine out here and do field work on it. So he'd better get him back home now before. Also, so yeah, that was kind of memorable. Nothing big. It's just that, okay, he's flying with a broken plane, but it's just a starter engine. So also, heads versus Drakens. Like I said, I ran into missile rail. Someone over at third company ran into it so hard that he got unconscious. Also, if you look at the plane from straight on, see if I can get a good angle here, you can see that the main gear is not going straight down.
Yes, you've got a little bit of canter on there, yeah.
Yeah, that meant that if you set this plane down really gently, the main gears would be too far out. They wouldn't slip in by themselves, so the plane would get caught with the shock absorbers extended. Usually, if it was the end of the day, our tow driver would usually fix it by just running that wheel over one of the drain wells, and that would bump it loose. Otherwise, we would stand a few people up on the edge of the wing and just rock it until the shock absorber gave way and plane leveled out. But one time in the hangar, we were just taking the plane down after replacing the main wheels, it was stuck really high. So it was, instead of this nice, what should we say, squat, it was standing perfectly level. So I needed to get that down. And then I made a mistake of not checking under the other wing before I just grabbed the edge of the wing here and just put all my weight on it. And the plane gave way and sank down. And then I heard bonk, ow! I just hit somebody over the head with a fighter plane.
Interesting little stories there.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
So, question 9. How big is a Draken? Bigger than Viggen, smaller? It definitely smaller. Viggen is taller and fatter. Yep. And especially has a wider engine.
Got that big Volvo, yeah.
Yeah, but it's in JTA-D, so it's the same as on the DC... No, it's not the DC-9. The MD-80s had the same engine.
I didn't know that.
Which made us kind of miffed when the US put an export restriction of the Viggen towards India on basis that it had the Pratt & Whitney engine. We were wondering, why? It's on every airliner. Why are you making a fuss about it for this fighter aircraft? But whatever. So we couldn't sell Viggen to India. So smaller. Gripen is about the same size, but more bells and whistles.
Okay. Next question. Where did we get to? Did you have any issues that you had to fix often as the fleet was aging by the time that you were working on them?
Nothing that we as conscripts noticed, except one time when we were starting up a trainer. The SK-35Cs were actually A models, and to make room for the extra seat in the trainer, some of the avionics, like inverters and such, had been moved forward into the nose, and they apparently were a bit glitchy. So one time we were spinning up, we were given the clear signal to start the engine, and pilot presses the button and we get click, nothing. Then actually the commissioned officer, it was amazing. He goes forward to the nose of the aircraft, then he reaches down, takes off his shoe, and goes full Khrushchev on the nose of the plane. I just bangs it against the nose a few times, puts on the shoe, goes back to safety distance, and gives the spin up the contact sign again, and this time the plane starts.
That's an old veteran's trick by the sounds of it.
Yeah, percussive maintenance.
Percussive maintenance. Very non-Swedish.
Yeah, so... But that was about it. Apart from that, there was nothing we noticed.
Okay. Next, were there any specific versions of the Draken, or was it produced in a single config? Lots of versions. Anything you want to say about the different versions?
There were several versions, actually. Or there are several configs. AB models were the original, and they were just gun and sidewinder ships. C model was the trainer, so they took the nose off of an A model and stuck on the inline tandem seat. The E model was a photo reconnaissance. But then we also exported this one to Denmark, Finland, and Austria, and they had slight variants. We can go into it. It's on the Wikipedia page. But the Danes made it into strike aircraft. Just taking a look at. They could carry heavy bombs, bullpups.
Good bombs.
Yeah, they received a jammer, a new HUD, and rangefinder and marked target seeker. Finland doesn't look like they did very much with it. Austria got the all aspect sidewinders for them. You were wondering earlier about the early port sidewinders, Austria actually got the AIM-9 P5s.
Interesting.
So they eventually got it. We never got it that far. What am I streaming at the moment? Is it War Thunder or
Roger?
Okay. So let's see, where were we? So there were a few configurations. Danes, like I said, made it an attack aircraft. We made it also into recon aircraft. But that's about it.
Roger. Okay. Next question. How fast were you able to refuel and rearm the fighter between missions, and was the weather conditions a factor?
This one is a bit interesting because this ties back to the base 60 and base 90 systems. We had a time limit of 10 minutes to get a clean bird mission ready again.
Wowza.
Because as we... And I'm going to switch back.
I've done lots of interviews with crew chiefs and armors. I've never heard anyone say 10 minutes before.
Yeah, but like I said, we were expecting to get bombed. So let's go back out to Hagsholt. So these readying spots that you're seeing by the main runway, those were for cap and interceptor missions. That's where we were, where we would be when we were readying it. But we would not be stationed there. We would be somewhere out here in the woods, just so we don't get bombed while we're sleeping. So when we get the call, we would they would direct us and say, go to this spot and set up, because there's a plane coming in soon. And then we had about 10 minutes to get there. And then we would, like I said, we would ready the plane maximum 10 minutes, and then everybody would leave except the final 1 or 2 guys that would need it to just spin up the plane and get it going again. But that was with a full crew. For dailies, like I said, it was just 1 conscript per plane, and it flew at most 4 missions per day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So it wasn't. Okay. There was no stress there, but like I said, cap and interceptor missions, maximum of 10 minutes. Then we had to be out of there. Recon missions, and they would not be camping there. They would instead be on these side spaces. They had 15 minutes, and attack missions had 20 minutes. Because those would be pre-planned missions. That's the Supreme Commander ordering recon missions and attack missions, so they have more time. But cap and interception missions, you don't want to be on the ground. You want to be up in the air, being useful and shooting down enemy planes. So we had to do it quickly.
Roger, very good. What engine was fitted to the Draken? So that was the Rolls-Royce Avon, which is a very well-known and well-used power plant. And was it difficult? This wasn't your job, obviously, but any stories about was it difficult to work on and or pull out?
I cannot answer that. I have no idea.
Okay.
You'd have to get a commissioned officer for that.
Any questions about any stories or anything you knew about the engine?
Not a lot, really. It did its job.
Roger, okay. Just back to that Wikipedia document, can we just see the rated thrusts on them? Purely for my interests, where are they?
Empty way. Let's go to the arms. Yeah. There we go. There we go. We're getting something. Oh, wait a minute. This is in the game, actually.
Roger.
I'm going back to the game. I think it said crew. No, it didn't.
Oh well.
But it was. I think it was about 8 kilonewtons. No, 80 kilonewtons.
Okay. Right. Were you able to hear the jet returning after a mission? Was it noisy? What did you think the Avons were noisy? I haven't heard one for a long time.
Well, if you're standing under one during an air show, I mean, you will want to put earmuffs on your kids. but it wasn't particularly noisy. No, Viggen was noisier, and I think Gripen is screechier.
Yep, agreed.
It's the old radial, what do you call it, axial compressors actually sound quite pleasant. And if you go a little bit earlier, like the Goblin and Ghost engines, I mean, they're whistling. That's kind of pleasant sound. But unless they were doing a landing lap, no, you didn't really. You didn't really notice.
The funny thing about engine noise is it's not always the most power that, creates the most noise. I mean, you know that obviously, because it's going to stand next to an A380. It makes almost no noise, and it's more powerful than anything times 100. But the design of the J-79, the American J-79 is the most noisy engine I've ever heard in a certain plane. The reason for it, I actually don't know. I think I may have this wrong. I think it was one of the first low bypass ratio turbofans, but it was very low bypass, very powerful and very low bypass, so not much kind of sound muffling in there compared to maybe a Raptor engine or a modern F-15 engine, and in a particular configuration on the F-104, it had a particular intake that did something weird to the air. It was called the Starfighter Howl, I think it was called, and it was so noisy. Just one titchy little starfighter, not much bigger than this plane. Not making a huge amount of power, not much more power than this plane, really. But it was so noisy. But anyway, sorry, digressing into my own things now. Right, let's push on. Did you have a chance to sit in the cockpit? And how was it if you did? I noticed there's quite a bit of recline on the seat there.
A couple of times, yes. We were doing ferry, just ground ferry, running one plane from one place to the other, and I would just need to sit in there to press the brakes if anything happened.
Yeah.
So did do that. I mean, it's cramped like any fighter cockpit. But let's see. Switch. There we go. This is what the cockpit looks like. At the same time, everything above your shoulders is transparent, so you got a great view. So
lovely little cockpit that is. Well, I like that. Just the essentials. Oh, you've even got a ladder for gauge for something. What is that? I can't read it. Hodge. Oh, God, I forgot my Hodges now.
What?
On the right of the radar scope. On the right of the radar.
Oh, those ladders on the left and right. Those are actually the GCI instruments.
What?
That's ground control intercept. Let's switch over to. They had a setup of that on the museum. So the middle panel here says Flygtrafikledare.
Right. So this was the first plane that had data link, and this is what we're about to talk about, which is a fascinating piece of history.
Yes, here we go. This would be the GCI station. And they could send commands to planes, tell them where to go, what direction. They could even give commands like, a digital command to the pilot that would read, fast, hard left turn now. So those tapes here are part of that system. So ADST is avstånd, means distance. The one höjd is altitude. Let's see if I can find a better picture. So many.
So next time you're in your Hornet, guys, and you're looking at your Link 16, this is technically, in a way, where it came from.
Again, especially so Viggens could do data sharing. Here we go.
Wow,
VI and M. I cannot say what it is. Probably closing speed or something like that. But yeah, and then the little panel. I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer now. This here is part of that GCI setup. So you type in you can read commands there, and you can type in who you are and things like that. But these tapes, they did not. Oh, this is a gorgeous picture. You gotta love night cockpits.
A simulator. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can fly. If
Wow.
you go to this museum, you can fly a simulator. I don't. Oh, was it? I cannot find it now. I had such a nice picture of a. There we go. Here's the A model, and
Wow.
you can see that. And you can see that the tapes are missing from
Yeah.
around the radar because that didn't come until later, until the
Right.
B models.
So
I
it was
think.
verbal until we got those things added. How interesting. Also, the radar scope looks really weird there, doesn't it?
This because it's got a light screen around it.
Right. Yeah.
You know Spock's old where he puts his head forward. It's the same thing actually, because that screen, if there was sunlight on it, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Wow. Look at us learning. That was really interesting. Alpha meter
Also,
right at the top left where it should be. Really excellent. Yeah.
See if we can go in here. Fuel gauge.
Speedo. I'll see the speedo.
Directions.
What's the top pressure ratio? Top left? Guessing, but just guess. Left. Far left. That's right.
Left. That
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Pass. I don't know. That seems here down here seems to be the engine gas temperature, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can dive into that
Very good.
more later.
Right. We should. So yeah, excellent. Good job. Was the Draken able to reverse? And if not, how easy was it to turn the jet? So maneuvering the jet on the ground, however you did that. Any question? Any response?
Couldn't reverse. Could do, like I said, with the division commander, he did a fairly tight turn, but it also slipped out because it was ice. Wasn't too difficult to move. Like I said, it's a small thing, so it got around.
Okay.
But you saw the. Look at these tight spaces that they're supposed to be able to drive in. So, and in places like this, I never used one of these spaces myself, but I think that most planes can actually come in here and do a U-turn and end up in the right place. But if not, they would just, we would have the tow car with us and just hook it up and push it in. But like I said, that was for the long time turnarounds. For we who needed to do speedy ones, you can see it's just come in, stop, go out.
Okay.
Also, fun thing regarding ground control intercept, when the planes were in one of these spots, we would also hook up a telecable to them under the wings that was tethered to the ground. So that gave the pilot a landline to the GCI central. So he didn't have to use the radio, and that cable would be attached until he started rolling, because, like I said, it was tethered to the ground, so it would fall out as he was pulling out onto the runway.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before. To have it like that.
Yeah, well, we're trying to hide, so let's not make our presence known with radio transmissions.
Makes sense. Okay, and next one you've already answered, but I'll ask anyway. Did you have any mishaps or dangerous moments while in the service?
Not really, no. Apart from, like I said, bumping my head a couple of times, but it was fairly safe.
Roger. Personal question. Why did you not join the Air Force after your conscription period?
Oh, I tried.
Oh.
I applied to be flying engineer or pilot. I got to the second round of testing and washed out on one of the tests there. But I did. Actually, my dad had been in what was then called the Air Force Boys. When it was my turn, it was called Air Force Youth. And it was essentially a 3-week summer course where you could spend time at the Air Force and just see what it was about. So I was at one of those just after I finished primary school, 9th grade. And it was great fun. And it was also part reason why I told at conscription, at drafting, I said I wanted the Air Force. And like I said, I applied to be a flying engineer or pilot, but didn't qualify, so meh.
Way it goes sometimes. Okay. This is purely theoretical, no restrictions, pure fantasy. What is your dream plane that you could fly? We get some weird. We get some good ones. We get some weird ones. We get everything. We've had everything answered to this.
Well, it depends on if you count spacecraft as airplanes, but it would be fine to ride a Cobra 3 around a ring somewhere, like in Elite Dangerous. Real planes, I would love to fly backseat on a Griffin sometime.
Okay, that's fine. Is the Draken all mechanical and no power assisted controls, or was it more complicated? So we've talked about it was physical link until servo power controls. Yeah, that's normal for the time, obviously.
It was, we can put it this way, it was all analog.
Yeah.
There was like 2 digital units there. Some for the GCI and some for the air data unit became digital. I mean measuring altitude and speed and such, that was digital. Right. But apart from that, it was an all analog, all mechanical plane, and it wasn't modular.
Roger. This, you know what? That's my kind of plane all over. Perfect. We've talked about this one. Was the jet equipped with an air-to-air gun, and what type was it? So the versions had 2 times, we think, Aiden. It says 30mm Akan at the top there. I don't know what that is. A Swedish word, I'm guessing, Akan.
Automatic cannon.
Yeah, so we think it's a pair of Aidens and reduced to a single Aiden.
Yes.
Roger. Did you do any night missions or night operations?
Turnarounds. A few times we did that. It's an all-weather fighter, and yeah, we that was part of the training. Didn't do it often, but it happened.
Roger. Okay. How long was a typical mission, if you know, and how many missions can a single jet execute in a day? Was there a limit?
I suppose that depends on, are you flying according to peacetime maintenance restrictions, or are you flying in a war?
Well, assume worst case scenario war. How many times could a guy get up and down? There's so many variables there, it's impossible to say.
Yeah, but normally when they went away and did an exercise, they would be away for about an hour, up to an hour and a half.
Roger.
But I mean, it depends on if you put in reheat. I mean, you got a whirlpool in the fuel tank. But I don't know if there is a limit. If you start to push it and don't care about your 10-hour intervals or such, it could probably go quite a bit.
Next question is about which missiles did you put on, and we've talked about that. The 24s, the 24J. I mean, you didn't have any, and your guy didn't carry the AIM-4 or anything like that. You said, didn't you?
We rarely had to chuck them on, but I mean, in day-to-day operations, the missiles would just be mounted, so they could be used for training, and they would be non-live. They would be not blind missiles, but not live engines in it, so they could just use it. They would lock on and say, "Okay, I got a kill."
Yeah.
Reset, start over.
Okay, makes sense. Was there a weak point in the jet's design? Something you were told to examine more often prior to a mission? It's an interesting question.
Not really. No, there was a set point of a set list of checkpoints we had to do. So like compressed air, oxygen, check the brakes. Hydraulic fluid was just once per day. There was one funny detail though that we always wanted to look at, and that was in the main gear well. I think it was on the right side, right here on the back wall. There was a G meter, and that G meter would be a tattle G meter that would say what was the max load during the mission. Because if that exceeded 7G, the plane would have to go into an extra checkup.
Oh, wowza. For fractures and stuff, for, cracks.
Yeah. So, day-to-day operation, it topped out at 7. I know the Gripen can do 9 without having to go in for any extra checkups.
Would a pilot get reprimanded for going over 7?
I have no idea. Probably not. I suppose somebody would ask him, okay, why did that happen? And if it turns out he was showboating or anything, then I suppose he would get a slap on the fingers. But, I mean, mistakes happen.
Roger. Did being a conscript impact your work ethic or effort? To what degree did you have to earn your way to being a Draken mechanic, or were you just assigned? We've kind of talked about that, but the first part's an interesting bit.
Yes. Sweden's philosophy about using conscript has always been that you're not doing it for a job. You're doing it because it's a duty, and you are defending your homeland, so to speak. So I think I cannot say that this has been an outright goal, but I think that, or rather, it's. I think it may be the other way around, actually, or impact your work ethic or effort. I mean, everybody that has done conscription comes out of it with a different perspective. They know more about what is the military about. Why do they exist? Why are they doing that? So I think it gives them a different outlook on why do we have soldiers? Why do we have airmen and so forth? So yeah.
Okay, very good.
It definitely changes that outlook.
If it's okay for you, I'd like to skip over 27. It talks about the Gripen. We have talked about it already, and I don't think we've got time to kind of diverge into the Gripen today.
Yeah, let's return to that if we still have the energy.
Roger. 28. With the J model being modified version of the J-35F2, were there any interesting or unexpected maintenance challenges encountered as a result of modifying the aircraft from its original design?
Let me just take. I don't recall if the extra missile rail up on the glove. Let me just take a look here. Yes. Yes, there was an extra challenge. You had to watch your head, because that's when the missile rails here on the gloves came on. So yeah, watch your head, because otherwise you can run into it. Apart from that, no, I don't think there was.
Roger. Were the 3 months of training enough to feel comfortable to work on the jet?
Yes, because we would, of course, not be working alone. There would be a rotation. We would come in 4 batches per year. So we who were just freshly done with technical training would then do the dailies with the older batches. And they would show us around, and we would get the hang of it and get the muscle memory with these guys looking over our shoulder. So yeah, that was quite all right.
Roger. Okay. Next, we've answered the next one. It's about why the doctrine of why you make your own fighters and stuff, so we've been over that. Is the maintenance on the jets difficult in the winter, and is it still possible to operate from roads in the winter? We know you do have a proper winter over there. Agreed.
No, not any more difficult. Just dress up.
Roger.
But there's nothing that changes. I mean, you have to use gloves, but it's always been part of that. And I mean, we have air bases all the way up above the Arctic Circle.
Yeah. Going back to the question that you just answered about feeling comfortable to work on the jet, and again, when we spoke to a conscript of the AJS, his response was that the planes are just designed to be worked on by conscripts who are there for 12 months. So they're exactly that. They're designed to be worked on guys with 3 months of training. So the whole system's put together with that in mind. Whereas maybe an F-16, for instance, wouldn't. But
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Question 32 is just a repeat. Was the Draken noisy? So we'll come back. We'll go over that one. 33. Were you allowed to do repairs or remove more sensitive equipment like the ejection seats, electronic equipment, external probes and or sensors?
No, that was for the commissioned officers. We would not be doing anything like that.
Roger.
We would be safing the ejection seats when the pilot came back, and also removing the safeties for them. That was part of the startup procedure when we were handing over the plane. But we would not be doing advanced things like that. Possibly assisting when the technical officers were doing it, but that would not be our main tasks.
Roger. The next question is just a repeat as well. So what we usually do at this point is turn it over to the viewers and see if we've got any viewer questions, please. Anyone in chat? How many do we have flying in Sweden now? None operational, obviously, but how many flying in Sweden? Any idea?
There is one. There is
Wow.
Johan 56. That was one of mine. I have serviced that aircraft.
Oh.
If you go to military air show in Sweden, you are likely to see that one in the air. There is one in the US. See, I'm going to check on the Wikipedia page. List of preserved Drakens. There are a number of them in museums. You have two in the UK, an A model and an F model.
Where? I don't remember.
Yeah, Dumfries and Galloway Aviation.
Okay.
And you have one at Airborne Systems in, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, in Wales.
Roger.
And let's see, the US has... there's a Flywheel D model at McKellen in California. Two on display. National Test Pilot School at Mojave. Number of them in storage. Let's see. Mojave, Chino Airport, Williamsburg, and McKellen.
So at least we've got a handful of them out there. And they should hopefully be treasured, which is nice.
But if you search for Johan 56, you will see pictures of that one, and she is still looking absolutely gorgeous.
Lovely. Next question. Were the average pilot allowed to do the Cobra maneuver, or was it only for testing and special purposes?
I cannot say. I mean, it's a risk, and it's a high-stress thing. But I suppose if it was for training...
Makes sense. It's like pilots have to do spin recovery and stuff, and that's a dangerous thing. So.
Yeah, but that's the video you saw there, where you saw them doing the Cobras. That was with two trainers.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of them having the special spin recovery chute on. But there was at least one, maybe two trainers that had that special chute. It's bigger than the drag chute, and it has a ballistic ejection to get it far away enough from the turbulent slipstream so that it would actually recover the plane in case it went into a bad spin from which they couldn't recover.
Do you know of any other aircraft that have an anti-recovery chute? I can't think of anyone, but
I cannot say, but because I said that was special for those two particular planes. In case they just for spin recovery training, but that was like an optional extra, so to say.
Roger. Okay. From Tobin TV, we have one flying in Austria air shows, as far as I'm aware. Well done. Mitch from Sweden. Cap question from a old flyboy to another. Where was he flyboy? What base and what age? I was a F7 every year from age 12 to 17. Cheers. I don't know what any of that means, but does that mean anything to you?
Flyboy. That's probably what it probably means. What I said before. The aircraft boys. I mean, like the youth recruitment program.
Yeah.
I was at F10 Ängelholm in 1989. So that's probably what he meant. And then I did my service there as well.
Yep. Mitch says thank you. Brilliant. Right. Michael, that was that was fantastic. Usually some of these are quite hard. I have to struggle to kind of inject I don't know what the word is, but inject something into it to keep these going. But you, in a typical Swedish manner, were prepared. You had all your spreadsheets and everything up and ready, and it's really nice to see that. It just means I can sit back and actually enjoy it rather than worrying and doing stuff. We've got... Say again?
Let me just see if I've used up all my tabs.
There's a nice vegan one I haven't seen before.
Yeah, let's see. Like I said, that's the night cockpit, and that's the modernized radar. The one we saw on the A looked different. Let's see. Yeah, that's Rolls-Royce Avon. That was the engine for it. Filliport for the isopropyl nitrate, monopropellant. Flyable vegan, the airbase, the missiles. We have the... we have a more modern Sidewinder on the Viggen, I think. Don't recall which version it was. Oh, yep. Let's see. Oh, there we go. RB-74. It's the AIM-9L, but I would be surprised if they haven't updated that again for the Gripen. So this one, these green vehicles. That's our vehicles, the readying personnel. So like I said, we wouldn't be hanging out by the runway. We would be camped out in the forest several kilometers away. But these would be our vehicles. These, what is it, J20s, I think? J20 Jeeps with trailers. So on this particular trailer, it's the fuel pump connected to the fuel truck. Would also have compressed oxygen and such. Another one of these would have a trailer with the ordnance, missiles, and gun ammo. So when we got the call, we would get into these, drive out to the spot, ready the plane, and then everybody would just dash away as quickly as possible, preferably in under 10 minutes.
Awesome.
And we did the strategic situation. Okay. That was it.
Lovely. Well done. Thank you very much for that. I've got a meeting in 10 minutes, so I've got to get ready for that. So that's timed. Even the timing was absolutely perfect. I learnt a lot there, and I enjoyed talking to you. So I insist that you stick around in generally, and keep in touch with us, and even come fly with us would be nice. I actually recognise your tag, so it looks like you have been flying with us.
No, I haven't been flying yet.
Well, we'll get you up in the air. Any final thoughts before we knock off?
No, just thank you for letting me babble on for an hour and a half.
We love babbling. That's what we're here for. Right, I've got to go, but thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that at home, and I'll see everyone later.